The importance of the child staying in the classroom is so they can learn to interact with other kids. If they can't work alongside other kids, then they're never going to grow as a person. How can they ever go into junior high or high school or do a job? You're always around people. So learning the skill of working alongside and working in a team is really huge for any child, but particularly this child, where that skill hasn't really been working.
It is important, although it can be very distracting to the teacher, it can be very distracting to the other learners in the class, but it does have the advantage of not only the child socialising and learning with their peers and not being isolated, but also for the children to learn that it does take all sorts to make up a world, and they learn a lot from the child in the classroom as well. And quite often there's 2 or 3 or 4 sometimes children with quite high needs in one classroom, so you know, the rest of the class are learning important values along the way as well.
Just being able to have values and how the children interact with children who have got physical and, you know, perhaps intellectual disabilities. They're really good. A number of years ago we had an intellectually handicapped child here, and the kids just accepted him for who he was. There's no differences, there's no kind of prejudices here, which is absolutely fantastic. And that's, I think, one of the, you know, well, one would hope that, you know, values is one of those areas that they can glean some information from and look to see that everybody's on a equal footing instead of, you know, different than anybody else.
We interact him as much as possible because he likes being around other kids, and the other kids like, you know, dealing with them and stuff. And he has buddy time, which a student out of the class gets, you know, half an hour with him each day, a different student.
And that child comes out, which they enjoy getting a bit of time out of class, but they get to play with him and they interact with him, which is very good because a lot of children don't get to interact with children like him or children with a disability or a special need.
Read to him, help him out.
But when he's in class time, like if the class is on the mat, we try to have him down in there, including with the class. The class performs at assembly, we're up there, right up there in the middle of everybody performing. He loves kapa haka. We're in the kapa haka group and we've got our own special spot right in front of everybody. And so we can do the actions together and everything because he loves doing the actions. And yeah, no, we incorporate, he is fully involved with the class and everything that they do.
When they get older, they have, you know, the views of a special needs child and stuff. It's just good to, you know, be around that sort of person, I guess, yeah.
High needs is when usually a child is incapable of writing, maybe even speaking, may need toileting, that sort of thing. And if wherever possible, we try to incorporate them in as many things as we can with the other children in the class, because it's important for the child to feel part of it. And in some ways for those children, the most important thing is socially to feel part of it and to take mix and match. And it's really good for the other children too, because they learn that all children have different aspects to give to society and to mix and match in the class. And so, where we can possibly do so, we use them in the classroom and do things together. But sometimes it's physically impossible, and so you find an alternative. And the children know this too. They understand.
A teacher aide who's effective in those social roles, the child has actually modelled really good behaviour and the right things to say at the right time. And often the teacher aide attracts children to them, and that allows that child who's got needs to be around children. It's not so much, it's actually the teacher aide that attracts the children by their comments and their involvement with children, and so that puts that child into a group situation. That probably wouldn't have happened if there wasn't an adult in there.
I think it's a piece in the puzzle. Acceptance is a huge thing in today's society, and bizarrely you can almost argue that the better global communication gets, the more fractious and sectional we're becoming as a society, and I mean worldwide. But one of the things that the kids here are good at is accepting kids from different backgrounds. Yeah, we have probably the widest socioeconomic spread within any one school in Invercargill, and so because of that, the rule is when you're here, it doesn't matter what your background is, this is how it is, this is how you will behave, these are our expectations. And out of that, I think you do get a more tolerant society. Certainly these kids are pretty good. We've got a lot of what you call blind spots in the school, like areas that you can't see if you're somewhere else on the grounds, and yet we only need one adult on duty at any one time, because the kids are pretty good at policing and monitoring themselves. There are two major sources of funding for teacher aid, supporting teacher aides working with kids. One is the ongoing resourcing scheme, which the ministry administers, and the other is a chunk of a Board of Trustees' own budget that they may or may not choose to use to put teacher aid support in. We recognise that these guys are vital to the game.
As the SEMCO person in the school, I do make recommendations to the principal. Him and I have a look at the funding and how much funding is available from the board. It needs to be discussed with the board because there are only so many funds available.
As far as I'm concerned, our position, we bring no money at all to schools. There are other resource positions that do. So the schools have got funds, we don't have any, and so they have to work out the value of our program and what we're offering, and then the Board of Trustees of that school, in most cases, will fund the teachers' aides hours for whatever work we set up.
First and foremost, their student achievement data will show that they need extra support of one sort or another, or it might be behaviour issues, or it could be socialisation issues, and for some kids it's health. Generally, if it's health, it'll be the ministry's AWES scheme they'll pick them up, but the rest is pretty much open season. Chronic behaviour will also be picked up by ministry funding, whether that comes through AWES or the Resource Teachers of Learning and Behaviour funding process. That's another sort of term-by-term, case-by-case approach that can pull that in. But it'll be child's need first and foremost.
Some children come with funding that the government actually stipulates that they need a teacher's aide, so that in that case a teacher's aide is actually organised for that child, but there is also a component of the operations grant that allows the school to choose which children get help, and it then becomes a process within the school where you identify children with needs and prioritise those needs and work out how that teacher aide's going to cater to those children. Yeah. Sometimes it's individual, sometimes it's in groups.
We'd have every child that is recommended on the program if we could, but the resources don't really stretch that far. So yes, it's dependent on the funding available from the board. And then other funding comes too through applying to outside agencies if these children are of high needs.
In a perfect world, every classroom would have a teacher's aide attached. That second set of adult eyes and hands in the place makes a big difference. And in some places in the world, and I want to say Ontario, Canada, but I'm not sure that I'm right, that has been done in the past. And there is evidence to show that it has the total impact is greater than the sum of its parts, if you know what I mean. But that's expensive, and New Zealand doesn't go for expensive. OECD report that lists us as one of the best under-funded, under-resourced education systems in the world.
Sometimes the choices are made by the fact that you can work 2 or 3 children together, so that becomes good use of the money. Sometimes it's because that solution is fixed by 6 or 8 weeks of help, so that becomes a really good choice for why you might choose to give a teacher aide, because you can see the outcome. Sometimes it's because the child needs that kind of assistance to actually function in the classroom, and without it a lot of other children's learning is affected, and so by putting in that teacher aide, that child and the rest of the class get help. So yeah, there's all those things to weigh up when you choose which way to use a teacher aide. Yeah.
The funding that the board gets comes through, it's called the Special Education Grant, and it's basically a per head amount. And the problem with per head amounts is that the formula assumes that there's an even spread of needs through the community, and there isn't. So, for example, a few years back here, we had a wee guy who had high needs, needed somebody on full time. There was this safety for him and safety for kids around him. Our SEG grant that year totalled $14,500 for the whole school, and he swallowed 18 grand of board funding alone before things reached a head, and he qualified for a different form of ministry funding. Now, he swallowed that 2 years in a row, so we couldn't stop supporting other kids. So our board had to dig deep within its own budget and find ways of funding that. So yeah, it's a fair old challenge.
A parent's role is huge. Being myself a parent, I know that it's not just about the school, it's not just about the teacher or the TA, it's about the parents as well.
Most parents only want the best for their kids. It's a very rare parent that doesn't. They may not have the skill set required, but they will want the best for their kids. Most parents are the best advocate for their kids.
So you will get some parents with very strong ideals and a very strong idea on the type of education and what they want for their children. It can be very demanding from the teacher's point of view, but at the end of the day, it's the child's parents, and they're the ones that have the biggest investment in their child's life.
There is a small element that seems to subscribe to the, while he's at school, he's a school problem. I've actually had that said to me by a couple of parents in my career. Don't tell me it's not my problem. He's my problem when he comes home. While he's at school, he's your problem. Which, in one case, highlighted what the problem actually was. But in general, there'll be a really strong and positive relationship between home, school and family.
To move a child forward, there needs to be triangulation. So in all cases, the parents are informed about what's actually happening in the school with their child. If a child is going to be working alongside a teacher aide or on another specialist program, the parents are informed by the teacher.
And quite often the teacher aide works directly with the family, and often the family will choose or interview a teacher aide and select a teacher aide that they want for their particular child. So it's hugely important that they have a really professional, sort of well-balanced working relationship with the teacher aide for the benefit of everybody.
There are times when the parent, the teacher and the teacher aide get together, and this is really important, so that they're all on the same page, working for the same thing, that they all agree that this is what they think's the next stage, so that everyone has ownership of it. It takes a village to teach a child and to bring a child up, and that's what this is about.
When the first year that I started here, we had a kind of like a peer support group, I suppose, where another teacher aide and myself met with parents on a reasonably regular basis. I think it was once a month. And it kind of came across slightly better from us instead of teachers, because they feel a little bit more easier talking with us.
Teachers come and go, but parents are with children the whole 9 yards, the whole way. If I can equip parents with the skills to manage and work side by side every night with their children, I'll give them feedback, I'll encourage them, I'll build the learning steps. But I just say to parents too, you actually don't need to worry about whether they'll get a job or not, because these guys have learned what hard work is at this tender age. You've worked beside them, you've built the most amazing rapport with your children, and you will work side by side as the children grow up. And so it's absolutely crucial.
And I know, for example, with our resource teacher of literacy, she actually gets the parents to come in and watch her taking sessions, and she'll also get the teacher aides to come in and watch you taking sessions, so that everybody's on the same page and so that everybody's doing the same thing with the child, so there's not the confusion.
If parents can reinforce what we're doing here at school and vice versa, then it's going to be so much more beneficial for the child.
And I think at the start a lot of them may not realise how critical it is, but it just reinforces what they've learnt during the day, and then they go to bed with the knowledge in their head, and yeah, it stays there.
It's good for us, teacher aides, to know from parents what they can do at home or what the parent at home is doing with them and wants them to achieve more. In that respect, we can surely, like at school, go in that direction with what they're learning at home.
Because it's got to have the home backing as well. They all get homework, and just to reinforce what I've taught them during the day, Mum or Dad do it at night, and yeah, most parents are pretty blooming good, yeah.
I don't have a lot of interaction with parents. I guess the spot where I'd like to have more would be with PMP. That program is run specifically where that we need parent help to come in and actually assist with the exercise stations, because there's 5 stations that we have, and so it would be helpful to have a parent help on those stations assisting, but unfortunately that's not the case, and we don't have huge amounts of parent help in there.
It's very important that everybody is communicating with each other, and usually there's a notebook that has little snippets of something that's happened at home, so that the teacher can comment on it and discuss it with the child, or vice versa, so that people know what's coming up. It's important for a lot of these children, especially autistic children, to know what's coming next in the program so that there's no surprises.
Some children receive assistance because they're physically or mentally disabled. Those teacher aides often have to work more directly with parents, have day-to-day conversations, but some children who are given teacher aides are actually just having learning issues extended, or that they tend not to see the parents as much because they're in and out during the day while the child's at school. So you become more important because the parent more often sees you than the teacher aide.
I always stay in contact with parents right the way through. I have lots of interviews where the parents watch me working with children. The children go back to their rooms, then I say, righto, you ask the questions, what would you like to know? My first question always is, how are things really at home? I need to know so that we seal off all of the gaps, because children are designed to find gaps.
We live in a very busy world, and mums and dads are both often working, and that means they just do not have the time. When they come home at night, they put the kiddies down and get them to sleep and do the homework maybe, but those times of stories and sitting little ones on your knee with your voice just by their ear, because of life this doesn't happen as much, and we're paying for it with children at school. And it's not necessarily people's fault, it's just how life is, and we've really got to try and stop and think about it and concentrate on it and see if we can get more of this going. That's why we're doing so much more of oral language at school.
At least so if it's a TA working in a general class situation where he or she will be working with small groups and individuals. The relationship with the parent there is not so vital. The teacher relationship with the parent is, but the stool still has 3 legs. Just that in this case, and this is how it is for most kids, the 3 legs are the teacher, the family and the child themselves. Our kids are used to being involved in 3-way interviews, for instance, in terms of both goal setting and reporting, and we expect them to lead those by the time they're at year 5 and 6.
We can function without the parents, but it works better if you're functioning with the parents. A parent who's not behind you can be actually quite destructive because they can make it seem like it's a bit of a nuisance that, you know, you're having to do this work with a teacher. But if the parent's behind you and supporting you, then the child also feels that positive feeling that it's a good thing that they're doing it, and so the parent becomes very important. Yeah.
I think that if you can get everyone working together for a child, then it just works so much better.
And then the parents realise too, you know, keep it up at home, what you're learning at school, and the child feels good, I feel good, everybody feels good.
One of the main reasons I do my job is because I don't just see the kids here and now. I want to be able to see them go into junior high or high school, see them as adults and see them develop as people, take the skills that they're learning here and take them into the future with them.
I mean, you're seeing achievements and little things happen on a regular basis. That's the other part of this job, is just, it's very, very rewarding. That's what I like about it. And it can be so different. It might only seem very small, and sometimes you seem like some of the things that you do, you're wondering as to how they actually make a difference. But in the big scheme of things, there is differences being made.
When you start off with a child and this child comes in and out of the whole alphabet they might only recognise 2 letters and they only have 1 sound, and by the time you've been finished working with them even after a term, and they can give you the sounds for 60% of the alphabet and tell you words and the sounds that go with those, it's absolutely amazing.
I'm lucky because I'm the first teacher of reading, and so I often see children who suddenly get the idea of how reading works. It's so obvious the day they get it, and they just look at you and go, and I go, yeah, you're reading, and they understand that they are, and I see that often. Yeah, I'm lucky.
Like when there's progress gained by any student with high needs, makes you feel good, like you've actually accomplished something. It's just a great feeling that, you know, that they've moved on from where they are and they're slowly progressing, basically, yeah.
And just to see a quiet child who's behind catch up with the class and be able to read, it's really exciting. And if I'm lucky enough to be with one child for 2 or 3 years, it's just great to see the growth. So you go home with a smile on your face and feel like you've done something worthwhile.
Sometimes they come in a little bit reluctant and scared and that, and then as they get to know you, they relax and start to have fun with you and see their personality come through, and just that, between that and the progress, you realise that you actually do make a difference to that child.
Yes, it gives you a good buzz actually. It's really quite cool when you watch a child who comes in from one area, they come in this area and they leave at this area. It's really quite exciting.
The satisfaction, I suppose, comes from being able to just see kids happy, I suppose. That's part of the satisfaction, you know, seeing a kid able to achieve something that they couldn't do, you know, at one time. They go, oh yeah, I can't do this. And all of a sudden, you know, they turn the can't into I can.
And then you see them go, you can even see a difference in them in the classroom, and then when their confidence builds in the classroom, it builds more in the playground. And then when you see them go on to even just moving up to the next classrooms, you can just see, it's just a very good feeling to know that you've contributed to that child coming such a long way.
As TAs, we only see very small milestones, and sometimes they can be far apart, those milestones, but when you see them, it's just huge. You know, what it is for one child to, you might be working for 6 months on one little thing with them, and then they achieve it, and you go, this is why we're here. So
nobody really does it for the money. I mean, for the student debt you can rack up, you can usually get for the equivalent amount of student debt it takes you to become a qualified teacher, you can usually get a degree that'll get you better wages in another sector, really. But so most people earn it because they want to make a difference to people. If you were to talk to our caretaker, you'd probably get very similar answers.
I don't feel like we're alienated here at school as being, you know, kind of like teacher aides, and you know, there's teachers, and you know, there's a whole lot of ranking. They kind of treat you all as equals. I've learnt so much from the teachers here. I pick up a lot of their techniques as well as I'm going along.
I guess it's a bizarre kind of thing, because if you start with an individual child, say, and that child needs really intense one-on-one support, the more successful the teacher's aide is, the less contact they're going to have with that child, because as the kid improves, the support is withdrawn. So I guess the satisfaction is seeing big success like that. For some really, really high needs kids, the satisfaction can come from really small incremental gains.
One of the wee children I was working with, a wee boy, he was 6, and at the start of the term 1 I told him, man, you're really awesome, and he went, nah. Term 2 I'd been telling him all the way through, I said, yeah, you're really awesome, he goes. Term 3 I said, man, you're awesome, he goes, yeah, I know. And to me, that just, I'll never forget that. That's one of those moments where you go, you know, you're making a difference in that child's life from term 1, where they don't know how awesome they are, to term 3, where they know their worth. And that's just, how can you ask for anything else? You know, why wouldn't you do this job when you can see that in a kid? So that's why I do it.
I'm actually not sure I can really kind of put that into words. It's it's a bit of a lifestyle thing for me. I just like the life of being part of school, and you're impacting kids not just now but for the future, and that's, I think, one of the things for me. You know, who knows? There could be a Prime Minister or an inventor, or it could be anybody here at the school that you've had, something to do with.
To know that they got a safe ticket through with the role of mum and dad, or the whānau, that is crucial. And their look on their faces when they see their sons or daughters achieving, that's my payoff.
I'd love to think, in 20 odd years' time, if I'm an old fuddy-duddy sitting somewhere somewhere and look in a paper and go, oh, I had some input in this kid's life, and that would be fantastic. That'd be good.